like getting ready, and it's like, no, we're going to start at a bigger number. But in either event, we are live.
We are indeed. How are we doing this Friday?
It's Friday for better or worse. Here we are. I have been playing catch up all week because I was gone all last week. So you know how it is. Still trying to get back ahead. And when you do as much content as I do, right? Like to be gone a whole week, the week before you prep for the stuff that happens the next week. So the week before I'm trying to, for the week that I'm, not only for the week that I'm gone, but also for the week after the week that I'm gone. But now that's the week that I'm back. The prep from last week should have been the week for stuff for next week. So now I have to do double the work on 2 different weeks to kind of catch up for everything. So it's been a week, but a good one, just a busy one. So how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited. It's Friday. Weekend's obviously here, but obviously we'll probably do some work. But I have a race tomorrow for I guess the first race of the year, and then have a long run on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to putting the miles in.
Oh. How long is a long run?
The long run is 19 miles.
That's a lot.
So if you're, free and want to come, ride and find me on the trails, come hang out. I'm doing running office hours on Sunday from 10 till 1 o'clock.
Oh man. Yeah, I'm not even sure I could bike 19 miles, let alone run it. But yeah,
sure. Awesome.
Well,
we warm up the chat, but maybe you can get us going on those questions. But gotta warm up that chat.
Yes. So, welcome everybody to our weekly Traction Lab office hours stroke Ask Us Anything, where we just take your questions. You can submit them in advance at jdm.bio or ask them live. We do prioritize the live ones, but you might want a little bit more breathing room, which is why we offer the way to submit them in advance. And so we do have, I guess you guys liked Cameron going solo last week because we have 5 questions that got submitted. People are like, well, that douchebag isn't going to be here shooting down my stuff, then I guess I'll submit a question. So we got some good ones.
Well, data's data there. Data's data there.
Data's data. So we'll just lock and load. We'll dive right in here with the Pilates instructors B2B SaaS. So teaching group reformer classes. I don't know what that is because I don't know Pilates, but Pilates instructors, B2B SaaS. They've got paid pilots with 19 Pilates instructors paying $42 a month. They call it class scheduling and client progress tracking. They use it. They like it. No complaints. But here's what's bizarre. I like any question that begins with that. Almost all of them teach at studios owned by someone else. Their employees or contractors and studio owners keep reaching out, asking if they can get our software for their whole studio, which would be great, except our whole pitch is that we are for independent instructors, not studio management. Do we pivot to selling to the studio owners, bigger deals, fewer customers, or tell them no and stay focused on individual instructors, smaller deals, bigger market? Both feel viable, but we can't do both with our current team. Studio owner deals would probably be $200 to $400 per month, but we need different features. Instructor deals are $35 to $50 a month, but way more of them exist.
Yes, I think before you make a decision, we should run some sort of experiment to test this other potential economic buyer. So when we're thinking about making decisions, we want data to drive that. And so we don't want to just go on feel. And so it seems like, I like the assumption you're thinking through and making a decision related to that. But before we jump ship on one customer base to the next, we would want to make that based on some sort of experiment and actual evidence that these store owners will purchase it. So, I think it's nice you got some paid pilots going. You use the term, both of these are viable, meaning there is a path to this growing and scaling. But I think part of what then comes into some of the decision making going forward is like, what's kind of the cost to acquire these customers? So is one easier to land while the others much more cumbersome? So my assumption, again, this would need to be tested, but a studio owner is likely to have a longer sales cycle than probably one of these individual instructors. And so it doesn't mean that the studio owners can't be a customer in the future, but if who has the most urgent severe pain point and who's the most efficient to get in front of currently is kind of a path that I would think I would go down. But again, before you make that pivot, let's base that on some data. But I'll pass it to you, Jay Doom, and see what your thoughts are.
I honestly, I don't have too much to add. I mean, I think that's basically the question, right? So on the one hand, selling to the studios is easier in the sense that you get more instructors. You're saying that the market is bigger for the independent instructors, but is that bigger in the sense that there are more of them, or that there are more dollars? Because those are two different things, right? So I'm curious about that as well. But this is a numbers game, and the numbers are going to come from some experiments. So let's get some more data. I think it's reasonable. But the fact that you've got customers kind of clamoring for your solution, I think, is a great sign for future expansion, even if it's not something that you're doing right now. But worth an experiment. Like to see we got some good stuff going in the comments. Somewhere Tim found some attractive people. I'm not sure where, but send them our way. I always like looking at handsome devils. Mark says looking sharp. I'm assuming that's to us, and that works for me. Mark's got an eye for style, so that works. But I think I see Cameron, you're commenting in real time. It's the red hair. It is a distraction. It's like I get criticized sometimes on my YouTube channel because of my wild gesticulating, and I think that's people are like,
why can't you just say because of your movement? Why do you have to say gesticulating?
No, because it's not just movement. Like I don't move around. I gesticulate with my hands. That is the term for doing this with. And so like every once in a while I get these comments of people who are like, your hands are distracting, and then I'm like, turn the fucking video off. Then it's a talking head. Like, what do you need to see? I'm not like covering up the spreadsheet you're supposed to be reading through. You know how to. So good to see you, Tim and Mark. Thanks joining. If you guys got anything that you want to talk about, or if you just want to chime in and tell us how we're full of shit, or just endlessly praise everything we have to say, throw those comments in. We'd love to hear your guys' perspective on some of these questions too. As always, prioritize anything that happens live. So, if you've got a question that's kind of burning on your mind, if you drop it, it does not have to be as well thought out as some of the questions submitted in advance. The reason we offer submitting them in advance is because sometimes it's easier to like have some of that breathing space and do that. So if you want to do that, jdm.bio, you can submit a question there. But the comments here are very, very distracting.
Kind of like your gesticulation,
like I'm engaging is what it is. All right. I see Tim's got it here. He nailed it. Right. It's passionate. I don't know if it's full body communication. When I'm on stage, I guess I do kind of move all around, but just on camera here, I'm limited to just kind of the one dimension, which is just the hands. So I just do the verbal Tai Chi while I talk, okay. You'd never survive if there was a T-Rex around JDM. Okay. All right. Definitely, Mark. Sometime gotta have you on and have some fun. Same goes for you, Tim, too. All right. Well, let's do the next question while we're waiting for anybody live there. So this is a B2B SaaS for urban farmers and community garden coordinators. I think I understood that. They've got an MVP in progress, and they're building a garden planning and crop tracking software for urban farms. Talk to like 45 urban farmers so far. Every single conversation ends the same way. They love the idea, they totally use it, and they mention they're a nonprofit or cooperative and basically have no budget. One person literally said, our entire annual operating budget is $8,000. How do you build a for-profit company serving a customer base that's explicitly nonprofit and mission-driven? I want to help them, but I also need to eat. Starting to think that we should apply for grants or become a nonprofit ourselves, but that defeats the whole startup thing. Yes, it does. Cameron,
you want to take? Yeah, you take this one first. So
okay, so they do have money. Everybody does, and like there are like certain things that you can't make money at where it's just not viable, and that's real. But the question that I'm curious about, if you're giving them this software that makes their community garden lives easier, even if they are nonprofits, whose life is it making easier? And why is this better? It's not just generically better. It's not just better for the tomatoes that they happen to plant, right? That's not the point. It's for the people who want the tomatoes. And so like somewhere in there is the direction of value. And if you're saving the guy who has to, feed and water the plants and actually take care of the garden, if you're saving him a bunch of time, then he might pay for that on his own. So that's something. Or if there's, I don't know how the cooperatives are generally financed. I don't know where that $8,000 comes from, but, I don't know how much you need to take from something like that, but $8,000 seems like a lot when, this general planning software. What are you going to charge? Like, even if you charge $50 a month, right, then we're at 600, which is still less than 10% of that budget. So I'm inherently skeptical of they love it but they don't have money perspective. I generally think that's a red herring for it's just not valuable enough to pay for.
Yeah, I think the underlying thought there is that they don't have budget to solve that problem because it's not a priority for them currently, or they're not seeing the value associated with it. So I think, again, translating to like what is the end state that they're trying to get to in using this tool. So is it driving time efficiencies, or does it allow them to create more increase their yield of their crop, and therefore able to have greater outcomes or impact based on that, right? And so if they can create more impact, could they get more donors or more cooperative partners, whatever that might be, that then has some sort of return on investment. And so it's not that you're just solving a problem with nothing on the end of it. It's how is their life better having used your software, and like how are you quantifying what that looks like, right? If it's saving time, well, how much time is it saving? And like, is that person able to use that time elsewhere? And how are they maybe monetizing that or quantifying it? And then same on if it helps drive increase in yield or productivity, is there impact on that back end that they then might be able to monetize of like, hey, we increased the amount of people that now are able to get more of this fresh produce that we're creating. Therefore, people should fund this greater because it has greater scale or opportunity. So just because it's a nonprofit doesn't mean it's not profitable, and that there's not a problem we're solving. But I think the question to go back to is like, when we're hearing they don't have budget, is it really that they don't have budget to solve this problem because it's not something that's a priority for them?
Right. And that's like, how can you tease out that the difference between they don't have budget and they don't have budget for this problem, right? Those are two different things. The first one is a viability concern. The second one is a desirability concern. So
perfect.
All right, we did get a question in the chat, so we'll throw that up here. This one's kind of a long one. We'll see if it shows it doesn't show the thing, but it gets close. I'm curious on your thoughts on the effect of the agentic economy on the startup ecosystem. There's bots starting up their own businesses. It is wild. Are you guys aware of this? And how do you see it altering the vector of things that you do? A thoughtful question. So yes, I am loosely aware of this. There are lots of things related to what we do as entrepreneurs that with agentic tools are going to get considerably easier. A solo founder is going to be able to get to 1 million in revenue much faster and much cheaper than a founder was 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, and definitely from 20 years ago. So I think all of that is great, but there's a component like that, like to kind of connect to a previous conversation of the desirability that bots aren't going to figure out on their own. Like that's like they may be able to start to get a whiff of things, but they're not going to do a great job agentically, at least of customer discovery yet. And so there's a role still for the creative discovery of problems and the identification of solutions for them. Over time, is that gap going to close? Yeah, it will. And there's a whole economy 4.0 conversation to have with that. That's kind of beyond the scope of the office hours here. That's more, let's grab a drink sometime and talk about that. But as far as like bots taking the place of entrepreneurs, I don't see it. As far as bots taking the place of what Cameron and I do, yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're contributing to the bots, taking our jobs.
We're just feeding them content as we speak.
Well, right, exactly. Yeah, we're just literally like we're giving Gemini
right
content right here. It's like take our content, Gemini, and like turn it into something. And that's that. I don't think that's not a bad thing. Like it's, I mean, in some senses it sucks, but Cameron and I are always looking for like what's the next thing? How do we keep progressing forward? And we have some ideas that we're playing with for how we can use agentic AI to help founders and kind of take the place of us. Not literally a digital twin of JDM and Cam. That would be fun enough, but actually some more like next generation tools and tooling and systems and processes. So we're kind of thinking about those things as well. But also, as incredible LLMs are, I think we have a tendency to overhype certain components of it. And so I'm reminded of, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, there was that, you'll probably remember this, I'm blanking on the name off the top of my head, but it was a social media site exclusively for agentic bots. And so humans could deploy their own bots to this social media platform, and the bots would all talk to each other and engage with each other on the platform. And if you look at it from a very surface level perspective, it seems very interesting and like, I think a lot of people say terrifying, right? To look at that. But when you actually like kind of dive deeper into it, it's a cesspool and of, non-response and all the other problems that plague ordinary social media. And I don't think it's as impressive as other people think they do. I also don't think it's as dangerous as other people think it is, although it's a colossal waste of environmental resources to do this little experiment. But anyway, so I just don't think we're there yet to do all of that. But Moltbot, yes, thank you, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I knew you'd know what I was talking about.
Just did. Awesome.
What are your thoughts, Cameron?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it. I'm not super familiar with what's kind of exactly what he's speaking to, but I think it doesn't surprise me. And I think, things like what we do are probably the first things to go in that space. I think things that are a little bit more complex in the way, innovation diffuses into the market. I think that that process is still has a human component in terms of the entrepreneurial activity. Is there certainly a way that these agentic tools will be able to support in scaling that process? Like we're already seeing that take place. So that's helping people get to $1 million in ARR much quicker than they ever have before. So, but I think to our point is, a lot of it for us, like where we're providing value, is that kind of pattern recognition is often what we talk about. Is like we know the questions to be asking, and so those are things that certainly might help scale our ability to do that as well. So, but yeah, it would be interesting to see if they're just starting up ventures and like what is their, how does the whole monetization model of that work if they don't necessarily have their own incentive to do it, I guess, in the capitalist sense of it. But
yeah.
So we got another question from I think we got one from Tim here. He had one earlier as well. Just
it's a revised version of it. So this is all right. Deep philosophical question for you, traction focused guys. All of my portfolio companies are deep tech. Some are by definition years away from products, so early traction isn't really a thing. Obviously, you can engage customers, but real traction, as I assume you would define it, is impossible. Yet in the upcoming AngelCon event, it says up. You are looking for companies with early traction. How do you define traction if sales or revenue is not possible? So I definitely have thoughts on this, but because of the AngelCon reference, I'm going to let you go
Sure.
first.
Yeah. So I think we're probably going down the same path. Great call out, Tim. We recognize that revenue isn't necessarily always the signal of traction, particularly in the tough tech space or deep tech, however we want to utilize it. So we often talk about traction as a ladder of evidence. So it's not just purely revenue. That's obviously a strong way to be looking at it. But for those that one can't necessarily get to revenue, there's other ways to go about that. So is there an ability to bring on like letters of intent or things of that nature that show there's some level of proof of value that they would ultimately be able to tackle related to that? And so we've seen some, more deep tech. So one example that we've actually worked with through the startup challenge and the traction lab was company called BioChosen. They're creating bio bags, which is basically taking repurposed waste and then turning it into a bio bag. And his kind of challenge is working through is like, hey, I can't go produce 1,000 bags to go sell to a grocery store, but we're like, well, could you get a letter of intent with demonstrating like what that bulk amount of purchase would be? What would the purchase price be if you were to be able to create that? And so he was able to go through that process, prove that there would be sufficient demand for what he was creating, and then therefore being able to raise capital to actually go deliver on that potential opportunity. I guess other elements of it are some level of like time commitment. So if there's potential partner willing to like dive in and engage in the process of either probably not co-development, but to provide feedback in a more hands-on pilot fashion. We always would love to have it be paid pilot, but recognize that that's something that might not be able to be done. And so maybe there's some co-research or something of that. And so they're actually proving out that they're wanting to go down that particular path. But we talk about this as a ladder of evidence, not just one particular point. And so to get specific on AngelCon, I think those are the components. Was partly traction on like, have you moved some of the maybe technological research components forward? And then additionally, like, has there been any work to start to validate some understanding of the market? And so often what we see is like they're so focused on the research and the feasibility of what they're creating, but they've never engaged the customer side and like what is the actual value they're seeking to get out of a potential paying customer. So anything to add there, JDM?
Yeah, a couple small things. With everything that you said, it's kind of redefining traction. And I don't think this is exclusive to deep tech or tough tech. It's just a little bit more obvious. But it's redefining traction as evidence of desirability. And so if you think about something like really truly like deep tech, let's say a medication that prevents seizures, right? We don't really need to prove out desirability on that. We know people want to stop seizures, like that's a thing. So then the rest of it is just the pure science part and then the commercialization of that. But that's not true for most deep tech or tough tech products where there is actually a desirability question. And there are lots of ways, and Cameron touched on some of them, where we want to go and kind of probe at that desirability to get evidence of that. And that is some of the early traction that we're looking for. The other kind of early traction that we'd be looking for is sort of adjacent to that. And oftentimes that comes in the form of strategic partnerships or other forms of validation that we're getting from other players in the space that aren't customers, because customers are still too far removed from the process. Like we just can't do, like, yeah, we got early evidence of desirability, but it's going to stop there because they can't do anything, right, until we have the thing or until we get closer to having the thing. So, but there might be, other players in the space who want to be strategic partners or strategic investors. All of those things then become those forms of validation for that. And the investor profile for somebody doing something that's tough tech is different than the one who's doing B2B SaaS. And so like, because their understanding of risk, their tolerance of risk and their perspective on gains, like the period of time it's going to take for them to get those gains is different, like then you're just looking at a different audience and they're looking at different things, and that's cool, right? And that's fine. The last thing that I wanted to say is, so we borrow a lot from venture science for what we do at the Traction Lab. And venture science is almost exclusively used in the deep tech, tough tech type spaces where there is real science involved. And so then there's this science of how do you take a thing that's still in development and commercialize that. And there's a whole field called venture science. There's a lot of learnings that that come from that. And we've taken a lot of that over as applies to our, to the Traction Lab. Is part of our science is fueled by those very same things. And so there is this process that we go through of de-risking those ventures, those deep tech ventures. It just looks slightly different. And there's a parallel path from how we do it. But there's also a lot of different things that we're going to want to focus on that aren't necessarily strictly traction, but that are traction adjacent. I mentioned like strategic partners and strategic investors. Another one would be a problem-focused team. That's really important in the space as well, is that are you able to attract the kind of talent that are really experts in the problem space? So the seizure example is probably a good one, right? Are you able to attract onto your team as advisors or early, co-founders or whatever, some neurologists who specialize in seizures, right? And so that we actually have on our team this pool of people who are experts in the problem. And so like, if you think about that sort of opposite to what you have in like B2B SaaS, where the whole team is not usually focused on the problem, that's wrong. Their background and expertise isn't in the problem. It's in the solution of the problem. It's in making software and doing the entrepreneurship thing, and they have to become experts in the problem space. But actually, the teams that have an expertise in the problem space are much more likely to be successful. And so that applies in both cases. But it's like in the deep tech, it's just those types of things become much more readily apparent, simply because we're taking this desirability component not off the table, but shifting it a little bit in how we look at it, kind of diminishing it a little bit in favor of some other forms of evidence that we're able to gather.
Yeah, I think the only last thing I would add in is the example that keeps coming to mind was like, say someone's working on the new battery technology for cars or something of that sort. Like, we have to realize the impact to the potential purchaser. So it's like, in theory, yeah, we would want a more effective battery, but if it's designed in a way that they have to change the way the car is put together, that has huge implications. And so is that incremental change worth them changing how they design a car? And so in theory, people would want a better battery technology, but if they have to fundamentally change their processes, maybe the economics of the car no longer makes sense, right? And so we can only figure that out in that discovery component by engaging the market, not just purely the technology side. And so when we think about the commitment, is not usually just even the financial commitment, is how are they integrating this new technology into the thing that they usually offer in the market.
Right. And we see that a lot play out in technology that's not just swap out, right? So if you can just swap A for B and everything's better, then that kind of writes itself. But if they have to fundamentally change everything about doing it in order to change the new thing, or if it, then it kind of changes things. But also, even if you think, you mentioned batteries, right? So from lithium to sodium batteries, there's some big trade-offs that have to, that are part of that. And so then the question becomes, are lithium batteries just good enough that manufacturers of electric cars just aren't going to care, and it's going to be fine because they're getting the range out of the density that they're able to get right now. So that's where desirability is going to come in as well, even though it's not necessarily people who are they're not intending to buy the battery right now. There should be some skin in the game that they're able to put in just to indicate that their interest in having the benefit from that eventual technology, but it's not revenue. All right, that was a lot there. Hopefully that was.
But yeah, I think I love the question, and I think the biggest thing that I wanted to just point out is that's how we think about traction in general, right? That's not even just for deep tech companies, but also just how we think about it is you have to systematically gather different forms of evidence. And obviously a strong way is through paying customers, but oftentimes that might be a misrepresentation of them actually having quote unquote traction, right? We see this all the time where someone goes and basically they're actually serving as a consultant or creating a customized solution, and they have a paying customer, but it's not proving out the repeatable engine that they're ultimately aiming to build in the scalable startup. And so it's actually peeling apart what that revenue even looks like as well. So. but we can continue to go down many of those paths. And thank you, Tim, for that awesome question. And I think we hop to our next couple questions that were pre-submitted, unless someone else has one live.
All right. Well, considering the 1 minute delay, we'll just dive right in. This is B2B SaaS for antique dealers who sell at flea markets and online. It seems like a terrible business. All right. They've got 49,000. Just leading with bias, Cameron. Just leading with bias. 49,000. I mean, like, you know, we're always talking about like wanting to peel back the curtain on how people who do this for a living hear like startup pitches. And so I'm just, you know, I'm going to share my commentary in real time. You can see how we.
No, don't, you can't say we. Just kidding. Yeah, there is an automatic association, but
it's the redhead thing. You're part of the club. It doesn't matter. You're gonna take the flak. All right. So the B2B SaaS for antique dealers selling at flea markets and online. 49,000 in ARR, 88 antique dealers. It's inventory management and pricing tools. The demographic skews very old. That very is in all caps, by the way. I guess average age is 63 question mark. These are people who still use flip phones in some cases. I love antiques because they're old things, you know, asking them to adopt, the jokes are there right themselves, asking them to adopt modern software is like pulling teeth. Our best customers are the younger dealers, 40s and 50s, but there aren't that many of them. Do we just accept slow adoption and focus on the younger generation? Or is there a way to make software feel less threatening to people who are fundamentally nostalgic for the past? Had one dealer tell me he doesn't trust the cloud. Another asked if we could mail him a CD-ROM. This is 2025.
Hey, things are going back analog. I just got my first turntable and listening to vinyls, and you know, come on, like I don't know.
You know, there was a recent release of some absolutely killer vinyl from the King of Cool himself, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that and putting it on the turntable.
Nice.
But yeah, if you're a Miles Davis guy, but anyway, so okay, like now that we've gone through the whole thing, you see where my skepticism was coming from here. Okay, a few different things. So you've got some revenue. Okay, cool. Not bad. 49,000 is nothing to squawk at. 88 antique dealers, but the demographic skews old, right? And they don't want to use software. And so is there anything to make the software feel less threatening? Yeah, there are lots of things you can do to make the software feel less threatening, but none of that is going to make the software not be software. So like fundamentally, are you wanting to, and this is going to sound like morbid maybe, but like for a literally dying market, are we going to like modify our entire approach? That doesn't seem super scalable. If you have this group in their 40s and 50s, they're going to replace those guys. And then the next group who are in the 20s and 30s are going to replace the 30s and 40s people, right? Because antiques aren't going anywhere. So like I'm skeptical of these people who don't really want to be your customers. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is the difference between having the problem and wanting the outcome, the value that you're delivering, right? There's a difference between that and wanting the value delivered in the way that you're delivering it. And this is why in a business model triangle, we separate out like who is the customers at the center, right? And then we have at the top of the pyramid, we have like, what is the value you're creating? And so that value has to, comes from inventory management. And then on the other end of the pyramid, we have how is that value created and delivered? And that's separate, right? Because you can deliver that same value of inventory management by a person or by a software. And so even if they have the problem and are willing to dedicate solutions to solving it, and like they just may not be interested in solving it in this particular way because they're just like they're laggards and so forth, and that's fine. Some percentage of a market is always going to be. So that's one side of it. The other side of it could just be that they don't experience the problem with sufficient severity and urgency to warrant the discomfort that comes from software. That could be another factor. But all of that is combining together to a group of people who maybe are pushing back and saying, like, I don't want this solution this way, and trying to shove it down their throats by trying to convince them or de-scarify the software into something that they want, to me doesn't seem like the best use of resources. What do you think, Cameron?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I guess the two things that stand out to me is I would love more clarity on who those 88 antique dealer customers are. So we like, you couched all of this, not you, but the question being that these 63 plus year olds aren't customers, when we don't actually know that because you haven't really demonstrated who those actual customers are. Are they all the 40 to 50 year olds, or are they actually some of the 63 year olds? And so I think this leads into my next point, is that oftentimes when we try to segment the market, we do it on demographics versus behavioral traits, which tie to more of the problem and what they're trying to achieve. And so I think we're kind of like lumping in people based on age versus like some of their characteristics and behavioral traits that they're ultimately signaling to the market that they might be a paying customer versus not, right? Like there's plenty of 63-year-olds that are tech savvy, and I don't know that they play as much in the antique space, but I think we're kind of just lumping that in there. And so that might seem like a reason we're saying it's slow for sales when we haven't really maybe segmented the market in a clear enough fashion. We've only purely targeted based on demographics versus kind of these behavioral traits, and understanding the nuance of the problem. Like, are these that have signed on, like, are they trying to grow and scale, or what's kind of the reason they're purchasing this? And we often talk about, like, what is the triggering event? Like what was going on in their antique shops to like get them to start searching for this? And I'm looking for this solution. Was it they dropped the ball on something, or they got a whole new shipment of new things into their inventory and they weren't able to properly get it off the shelves, right? Like, what is that point? And then we can identify more clearly who we need to get in front of and how we're going to ultimately sell them on the value.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think that's probably all we really have to say about that. Looks like Tim found that helpful, so that's great. And yeah, venture science, I love it. It's a field, but it's largely confined to academia. So outside of it, even people in the entrepreneurship space usually aren't familiar with it. But it's actually really dope. There's a lot of great research that delivers some like really awesome insights into how to actually approach them. But again, it's just like mostly in the commercialization side. But you're around UC Davis, then I think there's some solid connections and work there at their, like, with some of the tech transfer and commercialization that they do. I think that they have some venture science staff, faculty. That's the word I was looking for. Cool. All right. Well, we've got more. We can do more. Let's lock and load. So B2B SaaS for I like we got this B2B SaaS just in tons of different markets. It's cool. For mobile auto detailers serving residential customers. I think we think this is a repeat friend here. All right, they have they're sitting at 167,000 ARR with route optimization, booking software for mobile detailers, 115 detailers subscribed. Here's my concern. Mobile detailing is kind of a transitional job for a lot of people. They do it for 1 to 3 years while they're between things, and then they move on to something else. Our average customer lifetime is only 18 months before they quit detailing entirely, not turn to a competitor. They just leave the industry. High turnover in the customer base means we're constantly replacing revenue just to stay flat. Is this sustainable, or are we running on a treadmill? Some detailers are lifers who've been doing it for 10 plus years, but most are younger guys doing it as a side hustle or temporary gig. Makes cohort analysis really depressing. Okay, so I actually have a video coming out. It's just a couple of short videos over the next few days. The first one tomorrow, and I think the other one on Monday. I think Monday or Tuesday, on this very, very same thing. And what it has to do with is what's called a payback period. And so what we're actually looking for in the math here is this payback period, which if the way that we get that is, we divide two numbers together, and the numerator is our customer acquisition cost, and the denominator is our gross profit per customer. If you divide those two things together, you get your payback period. So and I'm going to math for a second, and then I'm going to tie it right back to the question and put it in a nice neat bow. So that numerator, the customer acquisition cost, is all of the cost it takes to actually acquire that customer. That's sales, including personnel, commissions, salaries, all the stuff it takes to actually sell, the marketing dollars, ad spend, everything else, CRM tools, any like lead, if you're buying, lead lists or doing email, like all that stuff, everything that it takes to do that. You take that number and divide that number, the number you spent, by the number of customers that money bought you, and that's your customer acquisition cost, right? So you're just basically amortizing that like per customer, prorating it per customer, and you get like, this is our customer acquisition cost. It costs us $100 per customer to acquire them. So that's customer acquisition cost. That's the numerator. Denominator is not what you charge per month. So that's what a lot of people do, is they'll just take like, well, we spent $5 per ad and we have $5 cost per click. And then we'll divide that by $100 per month. And that's no. It's the gross profit per customer. So you actually have to take the amount that you're collecting and subtract from that what we would call indirect expenses, or your cost of goods sold. So what it takes to actually deliver that. So in a B2B SaaS, that's going to include all of the server infrastructure costs, cloud costs, anything at all that scales with the number of customers. So your office does not, right? That's an indirect cost because that's not directly tied to business. But the more customers you have, the more server space you have, right? More traffic you have, all that stuff. If you have customer support, that's part of that as well, because it costs money to do customer support. And the more customers you have, the more customer support people you have. So any of those costs become cost of goods sold. And so, you again, your gross profit per customer is the math, is subtraction, how much they're actually paying you per month with how much that's costing you to get that money. So if out of that $100, you're getting to keep 85 and it only costs you 15, which is about right for SaaS, then that's great. The number's 85, not 100, even though you're charging $100 a month. Divide your customer acquisition cost by that gross profit per month, and you get the number of months it takes before you break even. We call that the payback period. So if that number is 85, and let's say it just cost you, $150 to acquire the customer, then your payback period is 2 months, right? It isn't until the third month that you're actually starting to make money on that customer. So why does this matter? This matters because if you're looking at that retention figure before, that these customers are only staying for 1 to 2 years, what we're going to count as the actual good money, the profit that we're getting from this, is only after that payback period. So bare minimum, if you're any startup, this applies to every startup out there, if your startup has a payback period that's greater than your retention, you're fucked. Because you will literally never make money because you literally stop selling right now. Literally turn off every single sales and marketing activity immediately, because you should not do it, because it's costing you too much per customers and they will never pay you back. It does not matter if you have sales in the pipeline, do not convert them, right? Just stop. But if you're, in your case, have this 2 to 3 year payback period, and let's say it takes, or 18 months is the average or something like that they're saying, and it's costing you, you have a 16-month payback period, then you're technically making money, but not very much, because 2 months on average that you're making money. But if you're that retention, your payback period is 2 months, it's not so bad, because you're getting 16 months of just pure profit and revenue for a single customer. So it sucks. It's not as great as if their retention was 36 months, right? That's just math. But so that's the real question is, what is the math picture? That's your retention. What's your payback period? And is that sufficient in that constantly replenishing market to turn that into something that's sustainable? And if that payback period is too close to your retention, it's probably not. I know that was a lot going on in there, but I just wanted to take that in the math direction.
I don't think I have anything else to add. That was a pretty robust, Rain Man stuff there. So thanks for doing math for us there.
We're back to the Rain Man thing. I like the math. I like the maths. I do the maths in real time. But no, it's actually it sounds complicated, but if I had a dry erase board, it would be a lot more straightforward, because it's just a few numbers, really simple math equation, but it's actually really powerful, because it is we have there's video that I have is on this tool called that I think was in maybe a recent issue of the Pivot. I'm not sure, but that we call the like the payback period reality check, and it's just that. It's just looking like let's first of all calculate a real payback period, and then just compare that to our retention. And like that's the reality check here is like, are we actually building a business here, or are we just scaling loss? Which is what a lot of startup founders do, because the mistake that we end up doing is that we'll say like, okay, well, per customer revenue, we're charging $100 per month, and we're selling like crazy, right? And so we're doubling our number of customers every month, and every customer is paying us $100 per month. And you see these revenue charts, and the graph is going up, and everything looks great. And like that ends up being like, when I say that revenue is often a vanity metric, that's why, because that's actually not telling us if we're making any money. What we actually need to look at is the retention against the payback period. And so, because if like you could have your revenue growing every month and still be losing money, and just be scaling the loss, because the revenue isn't telling you about cost. It's just telling you about the revenue coming in. And so like, it's really critical for startup founders to have that understanding of what we call unit economics, which is all of those different, monetary components, the retention, customer acquisition cost, all the revenue model based stuff, and then the payback period. So
I think the only thing I would add on, just to go back to kind of Tim's question around traction, all of that is a ladder of that evidence, right? So we start with the like, is there actually like willingness to pay? And then we have revenue, which is, hey, this is a great signal that there's, some interest, desirability in the market. But then higher up on that ladder is solid unit economics, right? They might be paying you because at the end of the day, they're getting way more out of it than you're capturing back. And that's where you're often, scaling that loss overall, is because you have poor unit economics, and that like our lifetime value and the payback period aren't aligned with the overall costs that go into that for the customer. So.
Right. And like you dropped that other term, lifetime value, right? So what lifetime value is really the money that you collect after the payback period and before the average retention, right? That's where lifetime value comes into play. So the shorter your payback period relative to your retention is, the higher your lifetime value. Higher lifetime value means more money per customer, which is obviously better. So
boom.
All right, should we take a break from the maths?
Yeah,
I say that, but I actually don't know what the fifth question is. Did we get another?
You want me to? I can read one here.
Yeah, go ahead.
It'll be this one right here. So we'll go. This is a sustainability tracking dashboard for corporate ESG teams. Their target customer is the sustainability officers and ESG managers at Fortune 500 companies. What stage are they? They're currently pre-seed. They just finished a 6-month engagement with a Big Four consulting firm's innovation incubator. Cool. And they gave us $50K office space and mentor intros. Product is about 60% built. And the question they have is, the consulting firm wants to pilot their platform across 5 of their enterprise clients, but they want them to customize it heavily for each client's specific needs and waive fees for the first year in exchange for case studies and references. This feels like a huge opportunity for credibility and enterprise logos. Should I take it, or should I focus on finding customers who will actually pay? I think you'll probably know where we're going to go. But some additional content they've added was, we've raised $200K from angels, mostly intros from the consulting firm. Runway is about 9 months. The consulting firm keeps saying enterprise sales take time and you need proof points before companies will pay. Haven't actually tried to sell to anyone directly yet because we've been focused on this partnership. One of the 5 pilot companies sustainability officer told me, this looks interesting. Send me a case study when you have one. The other 4 haven't responded to intro emails yet. JDM, what's your thoughts? There's not much maths here, so.
There's not, but my thoughts is that they're getting blown off. That's sort of what I'm like. I see a lot of red flags in here. So first thing, like, okay, you're working with a consulting firm, and the thing that the consulting firm wants to do is take the work that you've done and turn it into more consulting work for them. That's like, That's what they want to do here. And I don't see how that suits you purpose. And they not only want you to do that, they want to do it without paying you for it so that you can get case studies and references, which is the rough equivalent of like a logo designer who's like just doing work for exposure, right? Like there's a time in everyone's career where we do stuff like that, and that's fine. But this is not the time to do that. Like not with your startup, not with big projects, not with 4 of them, not over the course of a year. That's like if people are getting value, they're going to pay, and if they're not, they won't. Yeah, it's a big bet. And all you're really betting on is being able to get a case study. And you might be trying to connect the dots to the other red flag here, which is like, oh, well, one of the 5 pilot companies told us like, this looks interesting. Send me a case study when you have one. That's a blow off. They're not an early adopter. They're not one of the people you're going to sell. And even when you have a case study, you're likely not going to sell them. And you have no reason to trust that that's the reason they're doing it. So if you're trying to connect those 2 dots together, well, we'll do these case studies in a year. We'll sell this guy. I can tell you right now, you're not going to sell this guy. So I waste the time doing all that. Have the problem in a sufficiently urgent way that they're willing to pay you money to solve it right now. And if you can't find those guys now, like then it's fine. Like it's great that you got some of those perks from working with that consulting company, but they're going to sink you because their interests are fundamentally not aligned with yours. That's my take.
No,
anyway. I know that was a little spicy.
I totally agree. I mean, we often, dial in the focus of, oh, we want these logos to add credibility, but at the end of the day, if anything, they're just testing the feasibility of what you're creating. And so the feedback you're getting might be designing something that's customized for someone who might never be a paying customer. And so if you were to go down that path, at least if you're gonna take that bet on yourself for whatever reason, having some sort of terms that upon delivering this at the end of this case study and you knock it out of the park, is there an ability for you to then lock in them as a paying customer? So defining that time period that transitions them into a customer, because then you can at least have that conversation. If there's pushback, then that that's not likely to be a priority for them going forward.
Yeah.
Additionally, what kind of stood out to me was, great, you raised this $200K from angels, but you're burning $22K a month, and I'm not sure what you're burning it on. I don't know if it's just, getting to a case study. That seems like a pretty expensive spend to get there, and without any real major proof points in the market demand side of things. So I would kind of halt on if you're building out a sales team or something of that sort. I don't know that you want to go down that path. Is kind of where I'm thinking about it. And then I think the last thing was we put a lot of weight into this one company that I think we probably have some. We feel strongly that they can support us because they led to some intros that closed some initial funding, which is equity in the company, but not them as paying. They haven't led to anyone that's a paying customer. And so, sounds like they kind of helped pay for your work for $200K by outsourcing it to someone who's invested in your company. Versus them actually putting resources from a consulting company lens to back you.
But those shiny logos, man.
They do look good. They look good on. They look good on. But see, the thing though, right, is like what happens is you're going to put this beautiful logo on your deck, and the first question you're going to get is like, "Oh, tell me what are the terms, or how are you actually working with that company?" And then you're going to be like, "Oh, I did this. I did 9 months of free work for this company that now isn't a paying customer." And you basically just said, "Hey, I don't have demand, and I've not allocated resources in an effective way." And so you're just going to turn off all the investors with something you thought was actually like the key point of traction.
All right. Well, if I was counting on you to be less spicy than my spicy take, I was setting myself up for failure, for disappointment there. So looks like we both had spicy take, but we got through all 5 questions. So that's rock on, and with and plus a few questions from our lively friends in the LinkedIn chat. The YouTube chat was a little quiet, but I won't hold it against you. It's fine. But we're right at time, so that's awesome. We'll vamp for a second as we always do in case somebody wants to come sneak in with a last minute clutch question there. But this was a lot of fun as always. It was great to be back since I missed last week's. I having done it solo, I know it's at least for me, it's not as fun.
Yeah, no, it's always fun to have the both of us go back and forth. So appreciate everyone's engagement. Love to have some familiar faces out there, and love the questions. And we'll be back next week, and yeah, would love to have continued engagement. If you know a founder that has questions or could just learn from engaging in this space, would love to have them hop on in. If you ever were interested in hopping into the hot seat, we always could drop you in and bring your face up on screen and answer your questions live. So we're pretty flexible with this space, but just appreciate everyone's time and energy. And Jay Dooms, as always, for being here, and thanks Sharif for being here. Good to see you, and would love to hear what questions you have, unless you pre-submitted one. So hopefully, if it was pre-submitted, we didn't roast it too bad. But no,
that's funny. You guys notice we never, like, our form doesn't ask for names. We do not collect.
We should. So then I'm just kidding.
We don't collect.
They know what they're getting.
Clearly, yeah, they do. But I never say this, but like the form that you actually fill out, if you do want to submit a question event, you can ask one live, and we'll put it on screen, and it'll be you. But like if you want to submit one in advance, we don't ask or track names, email addresses, company names, anything like that. You can keep it as anonymous as you want to, and that's totally fine.
Well, we do ask for their social security number, though.
Well, yeah, but that has nothing to do with the startup. We just use that for other things.
Real quick, we got a question from Kit. I don't know if you want to pull it up there.
Sure.
So Kit gave a talk on Ask Slide last week. Want to know what you guys would say are the must-haves for that. So maybe I'll hop in and see, JDM, if you have any additions to it. So I think the biggest thing we see on the Ask Slide is what milestone are you going to get to with the capital? Oftentimes people say they just do the use of funds. So we're going to raise $500K to hire a bunch of people. That's awesome. But where does that get you? What is the major inflection point that you're going to achieve with that capital? And from a story lens, not even just because it's a better story, but it's a better way to articulate the theory of your startup is right now we're at this proof point. We've got the evidence thus far in our traction. We're going to use this capital to get to this next major proof point, which will allow us to raise our next round of funding. And we're going to use the funds to hire these people to do these activities to get to that milestone. And so really connecting that dot of here's where we are today, here's the future state that we want to get to, and the funding is the gap of learning and execution to get to that next major milestone.
I agree with all that. To me, it's always those few key components: is where are we going, what's it going to cost to get there, and why, and what are the terms of the thing, right? So that's the tactical stuff. But I'm actually going to answer this slightly differently, is that for me, one of the things that I would say are must have on the Ask Slide is connectivity to the rest of the story. And this is often missing, right? So if we're raising in order to get to this milestone, in order to do that, we're going to do all of this, we're going to push on all this go-to-market motion, right? Then that better tie back to the traction that we have, that we have evidence for that go-to-market motion. And so oftentimes the Ask Slide feels like this completely disconnected thing from the rest of the pitch. And at that point, I just have so many questions about why that doesn't logically follow as what's next. Whereas the story is, this is what we're doing. There's this big problem that's, with this unmet need. There's these competitors in this space, but here's this, kind of niche that we've carved out for ourselves. Here's the evidence so far that we're on the right track. Here's what's next, and we need your help to get there, right? That's a logical story. And if the ask isn't part of that logical story and it's just kind of this disconnected thing, it really seems like even if you do have a milestone in there, the founder is actually trying to raise for budget as opposed for a milestone.
We just want to be in business for another 18 months is what they often say. Yeah, exactly. Oh, perfect. Can't wait to throw money after that.
I would also love to see on the slide itself, if it's possible, are we default alive at the end of that, or are we default dead when that runway runs out? Would be something that I'd like to see as well. But that's most companies are going to be default dead. It's just not optimal, I guess. Great question. That was awesome, Kit. Yeah, if you want to check those our way, do it. We'll also be happy to invite you on stage, one of these weeks, and we can kind of all geek out on a topic like this. That'd be super fun. That's I'm assuming this is still Kit Ryan.
Yeah, it's still
I just get LinkedIn user is for some reason all it's showing up as in Restream. So just random LinkedIn user, please come hang with us. We're desperate for attention. But yeah, with that, we are out of time. I'm actually late for a meeting, so I do have to run. But this was a lot of fun. Thanks everyone for joining, for the awesome questions, for your contributions to it. And Cameron, always great to hang out, man.
Yeah, always fun. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.